So you think the green transition is something that can be taken care by the green consumer, right? And your project is totally dependent on people making the right decision, the green decision. Okay, better change, better think again. We'll look into that in this episode, and we'll also have an interview with Melanie. I talked with her, and she's a grant writer based in San Francisco. She specialized in biotech projects, and she tells us a little bit about the day she discovered federal funding had been cut. So basically, lab experiments were shut down. Patients in experiments in clinical trials were shut down. Everything shut down. And there she was looking for alternative fundings. We have an interesting conversation about this nightmare for research funding, but we also talk about the bright side of research funding and proposal writing and all the fantastic stuff we get involved with when we do this work. And in this episode, we also take a look. We make a deep analysis of this new horizon called Cluster 2 called Heritage. There are 9 different calls on this area, a lot of funding opportunities, and a lot that can be done. So look into that, then go looking for partnership and start writing your proposal. You can find tools to help you do that in the Substack site. Just go look into that. And well, this is it. This is this episode. I didn't change my background, my computer background. I'm actually in Berlin this week, and I decided to try something new for the podcast. I'm living dangerously, as my wife usually says, and I'm recording live on this outdoors. We'll see how it goes. So I guess I should end with Auf Wiedersehen, right? See you. So, you think the green transition is about what people prefer? It's about the green consumer? Well, this might surprise you, but actually, consumer preferences will not save the planet. If you're still designing your projects or your products around what people say they want, you might be solving the wrong problem. Because one thing is what people say they want, another thing is what they actually do, especially when they shop, especially with their own money. We are all green until the moment we see the green out of our pockets. That's when we do different stuff. So this persistent myth that if we just nudge consumers in the right direction, buying eco products or recycling more or eating less meat, if you do that, the green transition will somehow magical way unfold. Well, look around. The most impactful transitions are actually not driven by consumer demand, from electrification to urban transport. They are the result of coordinated investments, new infrastructure, new regulations. Of course, consumers are important, but they are reactive. We are reactive. We make choices within a system we did not design. So if you want to make real impact in your projects, stop chasing what consumers prefer and start working with those who shape the system. Who are those? Think municipalities, think SMEs, utilities, building owners, public transport operators. These are the actors that create the context in which consumer behavior happens or doesn't. Actually, we had Josh Dorfman a couple of episodes ago in the podcast, and he told me cities are doing the real work. And he was talking about the difficulties that cities often have to fund these initiatives, and how often they are doing what we expected countries to do. So well, here's the shift. Here's the difference, and here's how we need to rethink research design. Instead of asking what people want, we need to ask what's blocking a change in the system. Uh, so we need to design research that identifies those leverage points, designs pilots that involve those with the power to implement them, and then design projects that change the rules of the game, not the labels on the products. Because in the end, the consumer doesn't lead the transition, they follow it, we follow it. And if you're designing for transformation, not just for greenwashing, not just for information, well, that changes everything. So check out the interview with Melanie, and you see how much we can learn about this. And go back to previous episode with Josh Dorfman, also very important about this. Hope you enjoy the episode. See you soon. So welcome back to InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles. Welcome, Melanie Das. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Uh,
Perfect.
Good. Welcome and thank you for being here. We have this opportunity today to talk with Melanie Das straight from Chicago. Oh, no, not Chicago, San Francisco. Sorry, it's the other coast. I'm sorry. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got here.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you for having me, Fernando. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's right. I'm from San Francisco, which is has a big, beautiful ecosystem of biotechnology and health and medicine. And here is where I did my postdoctoral fellowship. I was studying Alzheimer's disease. And now I'm a grant writer. And so the path there was actually very easy. I was surrounded by a lot of academic researchers who are starting new startups, all related to medicine, advancing health, reducing health disparities. All of these cool new technologies need funding because this is a lot of deep research. And so I started out helping some colleagues, some friends, helping them position their grants into innovative technology grants. And so that's become my specialty. I launched my own business, consulting new startups in the health and medicine space, helping them position their technology in a way that's fundable, and getting them launched and getting them to, improving humanity.
Mhm. I have a bunch of questions so just from what you just said. I'm very curious about how is it to write grants in the United States? I live in Europe, so that's why I'm
Yes,
curious.
yes.
And is it speeding up the technology, the innovation? Is it speeding up in this area, or is funding enough, or how is it? I
Yeah.
can't make all the questions at once.
Yeah, I mean, these are great. These are questions I get a lot, and these questions, the answers are very different from 3 months ago. I would say, or 4 months ago, the beginning of the year when we had a
Hmm.
massive change in our funding situation, all driven by the federal government. And as you know, the National Institute of Health has been what people say the crown jewel because it's one of the biggest investments in biomedical research in the world, scale of $150 billion, I think. And
Hmm.
all that money has been gone into grant funding, not just for academic researchers, but also innovation funding. And I've done a little bit of grant writing for EU grants. A lot of collaborative
Hmm.
grants have been done with US researchers in the EU. So I have some idea of what it's like. The grants in the US are very competitive, but there is a lot of money for each individual company potentially to earn. So they can win millions of dollars in funding where, I think the advantage here for people that are not aware is that it's non-dilutive and that means that you're not giving up your equity to do this research. So
Exactly. Yeah.
the answer to your first question, how is it to write grants in the U.S.? I think very much like the EU, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of rules. Sometimes that's where I come in to help, just helping someone understand the whole process, a lot of registrations. It can be difficult, but there's a lot of money available for people, and it's very enticing because it's essentially free money if they can win it. And then, of course, in the last few months, a lot of funding has been cut, sometimes even in the middle of experiments. There's been
Oh,
scientists reporting, like stop your experiments, you can't buy anything. Even, I think, more depressing, clinical trials have been halted. So patients were receiving treatments, they'd have to stop, or maybe they were donating their tissues, and that funding has been stopped midway. And it's been very emotionally, rough for a lot of people, a lot of the
Yeah, I
people.
believe I saw that happening during the pandemic. But I mean, there was a pandemic. There was a major reason for
Right,
stopping,
right.
and sometimes months of work and the experiments that have been gone for months, they were just thrown to the garbage. So you're saying that it's happening again?
Yes, it's happening again, and I think it's a little bit different now because in the pandemic, I think people came together, everyone felt like they were on the same page. We need to fight this pandemic. Now, it's a lot of people are afraid because there's just a lot of lawsuits going on. People are getting sued for doing things that the government has says we're not interested in this type of research anymore. So there's just a lot more red tape around things. There's a lot of uncertainty, and part of my job is to just help people through this as well, and find them other sources of funding,
So you
because the
have a
federal
lot of
government.
work now.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
have.
It's
Because that's something I was going to ask you. In this world so globalized, if your funding dries up, why don't you just turn to other sources of funding? China, the EU, I don't know. Is it possible, or is it too complicated to just suddenly change who funds you?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think the relationship between the country's funding and the economy it's a straight line. So essentially, I think countries that are funding their own research, it's kind of like a feedback loop for them. They want to fund their own people first because they want to help their own economy grow. So if you're funding, outside the country, it's a little more difficult. There's ways to do it, and I certainly am advising people, there's going to be money, and you may have heard already, especially in the biotechnology field, science field, academic field, there's going to be more investment in the EU trying to lure in these scientists that are no longer getting funding from the US. And so, but the funding is going
Yeah.
to be internal, right? It's like come to the EU and then we're going to fund you. It's not like we're going to fund another country because I think a lot of times they don't see the power of globalization, helping other countries. That's unfortunately not something that's on top of mind for a lot of these. It's not a long-term plan for people. I think it's hard to convince people to invest outside your own country, which I mean I don't agree with, but I
Well,
think
but
that.
I have to say, in defense of the European Commission, they don't need me to defend them, but I have to say that the most of the programs, like Horizon Europe, they fund projects that are partnerships between European companies or European entities and other countries like Canada, like Australia. So I've seen a lot of international cooperation, but most of the time it's this kind of partnership. The EU funds the budget for the European companies in the partnership, and the non-EU companies have to find
Matching
their
funds,
own funding,
absolutely.
even
Right.
if they are, for instance, Norwegian or Swedes, which are also European or presently British. They have to find their own funding, but at least it's possible. But
Yeah,
not with the
exactly,
United States.
exactly. It's
If
another way to get funding, and you have to, the way I tell people to think about the grant is what's in it for the funder, right? What's in it for them. So obviously you have to make it clear how you're going to help the EU, and it's usually through economic improvements. How is your grant, even if you're an outside international collaborator, how are you going to help the EU with your project?
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's natural, but it's how it works mostly. So, do you see a way out of this situation for American researchers? A way out other than migrating to France, where Macron is appealing to scientists, or I don't know where else. Well, they can migrate to Portugal. There is a lot of Americans coming to Portugal nowadays. But
That's
do
true.
you see any other way out?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a grassroots effort. It's going to be the scientists going and speaking out, which is something that maybe we're not comfortable doing, and talking to our politicians, talking to our government, and maybe we should have been doing this all along because now it just feels like, people are not understanding the direct correlation of healthcare research and the economy and the impacts of it. And there is a lot of, really cool work being done right now by people making maps of the impacts of the cuts that have been found done already and what the economic relationship is, how much money we're losing and how much money we predict to lose just by cutting funds and cutting jobs in the
I like
biomedical.
your point. I like that idea because that's also my opinion. We are terrible at communicating science and communicating research. We do that very badly, and now probably we're paying the price because if
Yeah.
it we could have done it better in the past. Will this be a turning point in that sense? Will researchers now have a different focus on communication? I don't know.
I hope so because I think we don't have a choice. This is kind of a now or never. We're at the cliff right now, and if we don't make a change now, it's I don't think we can come back from this. And I feel optimistic that we can, and when people are starting to understand the impacts of these cuts, because at some point, you're going to reach the everyday people. You're going to say, well, your aunt had cancer, like this is how we're helping you. Your brother, had gender affirming care. These are all people that are going to be affected, but it's hard to draw that line between, someone working on the bench and the type of work that we're doing. But I think even earlier is we're going to feel the economic impacts, from cutting this federal research and hopefully people are going to understand. And I know there's a lot of people trying to protest and talk to their politicians, but I mean, time will tell.
Yeah, I guess in the United States, the usual mechanism is to talk to your representative in Congress. In some European countries, that also happens. Not so much in Portugal, I have to say. But will that work? Is it useful to actually talk to politicians, or are they just out of this reality?
Yeah, so I think, and another difference in the US is we just have a two-party system, which is becoming very hard to deal with because there's the people that are like absolutely no way research, and it's hard to change their minds, and there's whole states where your politicians don't believe in science, or they don't think that this is worth funding. And it's those scientists in those areas that need to talk to their politicians. Like, I'm in California. Most people here, we understand the impacts of science. We are trying to build our own scientific institute, and almost become like our own country in terms of like scientific research and self-fund ourselves because we're a huge economy ourselves. But it's going to be those areas where there is, a very red states, as they call it. They're very anti-science and anti-technology and innovation, and anti-research. So those
But
people will be having to step up a little bit more.
that was my question also. Are there alternatives? I mean, you said it, the federal government cut funding, but individual states, don't they have funding programs? This
They
is
do,
an
and I
ignorant
think
question from someone who doesn't live there.
yeah, so a lot of the funding from states is actually come from the federal government. So it's almost like passed down, like we're going to give you a portion of our fund. So even though the cuts are coming from the federal level, a lot of the states are feeling it themselves because that's initially come from the federal fund. And, second, I would say that the federal research funds are just so large, that amount of money is so large that even if every philanthropist started donating money just to research, we would run out of money in 7 days. It's just not at that scale. There's no other
Mhm.
funding source at that scale compared to our federal government. So that's really the issue here. It's like no matter what we're doing, we can have emergency relief funding, but we need to get the federal funding back.
So now you are rewriting a lot of grant proposals for different funding sources, I guess. But you won't be doing that all the time. What are your future plans? What would you like to do?
Yeah, well, I'm really hoping that we're going to get our federal funds back in place. I will say that a lot of the biotechnology grants, we have the innovation grants that are still coming through. It's a little bit delayed, but a lot of the startups are still getting innovation grants, and I think people see the value in funding new technologies and new startups. So, I'm hoping that maybe even more money will be given. I mean, even before these federal government cuts, we were still severely underfunded. I think we could have more money for
Hmm.
biomedical research. So I'm hoping that there's going to be new creative solutions no matter what, because there was already issues with the way funding was. There's so much red tape, so much ineligibility, and I'm hoping that we're going to find ways, maybe collaborate with the EU more, maybe work in teams, maybe there'll be just new ways to fund ourselves in a way that doesn't make us so reliant on the federal government, because clearly that's not always going to be the solution. Yeah, and so, my goal is to actually even help people communicate science better, because we can see now the economic impacts and the downfall of not being able to speak about our importance and what we're doing here. We shouldn't just be holed up in the lab. We need to go outside and talk to people, talk to our government. Why aren't officials coming to us when they want um, the up latest with the pandemics? It's unfortunate that people are not talking to scientists, and they're kind of doing their own research, as people would say here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we should be seen as, the guidance, the guide of science, and help people get through things like pandemics and health related catastrophes like pandemics.
Don't you think that your area, health related research, science, should be the easiest to communicate? I mean, people relate a lot to illness, they don't like it. So, should that area be easier to communicate?
It's funny. I have always seen it that way, but then when I worked with people, I realized that, we get stuck in our own silo. We get stuck in, oh, I want to explain exactly what this chemical does. I want to explain exactly what this does. We get stuck in the details of what we think is so cool, and it's hard for us to kind of see the big picture. And it's like they say, okay, how are you going to explain it to your grandmother? You can't tell them all these tiny little details. You have to focus on what's important. What's your impact? What's new, what could have been, what can't have been done before that you're bringing to the table. These are all things I help people with, and it's going to be part of our re-education of how to interact with the outside world, I would say.
I would love to end the interview in a more positive tone. So, can we talk about the your expectations for the future of science, of innovation in this area? Are we going to finally cure some major diseases? I know Alzheimer.
Yeah.
What is your expectation? You work in this area, so you know more than the average citizen. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I'm so hopeful and so optimistic that some of our biggest diseases that have plagued our populations, like cancer and Alzheimer's disease, there's already in the last few years several new drugs for Alzheimer's disease, and that's amazing. We've been working on this for decades, and now we finally see things that are changing cognitive function in people that already have Alzheimer's disease. So it's just a matter of years before we have new treatments, and cancer research has already changed in the last few decades. I mean, these are usually a death sentence for many, that is no longer true. I mean, people will get diagnosed and they get treated, and they might be living with the effects of their treatment, but they live full, healthy lives now, and thinking about the climate and how that's going to affect healthcare disparities. I think that's the next wave of research, thinking about, changes in the world and how people will be affected by them, and, investing in climate change as well. I know you talked about this recently, is
Yeah.
also going to be very important to healthcare and improving healthcare disparities, reducing healthcare disparities.
So you are optimistic about the future, but meanwhile you have a lot of writing to do, I
Yes,
guess.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. As long as we're investing in our science, I have no doubt that we're going to get there. We're going to be able to solve many of the biggest issues in health research.
Well, what would your message be to someone who is considering his life choices, his career choices, and considering a career in science? What would your message for them be? Stay out of this. Be careful. What is?
Yeah, I mean that's something we're worried about, but for sure because of all this instability. But for someone considering it, I mean, I would say pick a good problem. Your innovation is only as important as your problem, and if it's just cool science, that's fine. But what our job is to answer the big questions, the big problems, and your innovation should be a response to that. So whatever you go into, make sure you know what question you're asking, what problem you're solving, and I think even the smallest change in that is going to have a big impact.
Pick a good problem. I love that. I think it's the great finish we could even dream of. Great statement. Pick a good problem. Yeah, and innovate on that. Fantastic. Melanie, thank you very much for your time. I don't know if there's any final message you want to please feel free to deliver any
Yeah.
final idea you might.
No, I mean, no, I think this was a good ending. But feel free to reach
Uh,
out.
Yes, I hope you don't mind if we put your contacts in the episode notes so that people who might want to develop some project with you can easily reach you. So thank you very much for this time, Melanie, and see you soon.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
If you think heritage is just dusty artifacts and old churches, think again. In Horizon Europe, heritage means innovation, sustainability, democracy, regional development, and yes, big funding. It's about using our past to build a better future. We're diving into 9 open calls from the Heritage Cluster under Destination 2, where heritage drives the Green Deal, digital sovereignty, and more. These are RIA and IA actions, funding up to €5 million per project. Deadlines are mostly the 26th of November, 2025 at 17 o'clock Brussels time. So act fast. Your competitors are already forming consortia. Don't get left behind. Let's break down the calls. First up, adapting cultural heritage to climate change. The EU wants practical tools and strategies to make heritage sites resilient. Think early warning systems, new protective materials, and real-world pilots. Build a consortium of climate scientists, engineers, and local stakeholders. Show you can future-proof history with solutions that work on the ground. Next, democratic memory as a cultural resource. The EU wants projects that turn difficult histories into tools for citizenship, linking remembrance sites, digital storytelling, and education. Propose bold, interactive projects that foster dialogue and connect the past to today's democratic values. Make history relevant, alive, and personal. Now, transformations in European democracies. Explore how democracy evolved and use those lessons to model future transitions. Bring together historians, political scientists, and data modelers to create narratives and predictive models. Use the past to light the way forward. The new European Bauhaus meets digitally enabled heritage. Propose projects that renovate heritage sites with digital tools and community co-creation. Combine architecture, tech, and citizen engagement. Think AR, 3D printing, and participatory design. Build the future with heritage at its heart. Reuse of underused heritage sites. Transform abandoned sites into vibrant community assets with strong governance and sustainable business plans. Engage local people, councils, and businesses from the start. Revive neighborhoods by turning liabilities into opportunities. Cultural heritage in conflicts and crises. Develop frameworks and rapid response teams to protect heritage during disasters and conflicts. Use digital tech, legal tools, and multidisciplinary teams. Create deployable systems to safeguard our collective memory. Green transition and heritage-led innovation. Make historic buildings energy efficient without losing their character. Develop sensitive, sustainable solutions. Embed sustainability in all heritage practices, from museums to crafts. Prove the greenest building is often the one already standing. Heritage as a driver of regional innovation. Align heritage assets with regional economic strategies. Think innovation hubs, smart specialization, and new business models. Connect artisans, universities, and tech sectors to create heritage innovation ecosystems. Turn cultural capital into jobs and growth. Digital Commons for European cultural heritage. Break down barriers around cultural data. Create open, shared digital spaces for all. Propose open data models, participatory archives, and new legal technical standards. Build a more open, connected, and democratic digital future. 9 opportunities to turn our past into a spectacular future. Calls are open to legal entities from EU member states or Horizon Europe associated countries. Form a consortium of at least 3 organizations from 3 countries. This is about transforming heritage into a living resource for innovation, democracy, and sustainability. Go to the EU Funding and Tenders portal and search Heritage 2025. The calls are live, the money's waiting. Subscribe for more guidance and insights. InnovEU is where transformation begins. Now, off you go.
InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles, is a weekly video podcast. Please subscribe to the Polyxox newsletter to receive every podcast episode. And if you like receiving it, please press like in whatever platform you are watching or listening. Also, please share InnovEU and Polyxox with anyone you feel will enjoy it. Credits: author and host Fernando C. Gaspar, music Hugo Gaspar, Lisbon, Portugal, 2024. Reach us by email or DM.